So now what I think I'm going to do is, I think I'm just going to focus on an eye and work out from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my dark again. And I'm just going to make sure that this is defined enough and correctly. And the opacity's down, so you're going to raise that. We're going to make this a little bit smaller. Okay. So now we're just going to make sure that everything is defined the way it should be. Once again. So we have the lash line here. And the bottom lash line.
Now those fine lines are what is really going to make it stand out. There are just very little lines of shadows, fine shadow lines, basically.
Right, and this also, you know, by not making everything smooth and by leaving these lines, it's just going to give it a little more texture.
I see.
Okay, so now that that's defined a little more, I'm going to take a lighter color and I'm going to come in and give that lid a little bit of depth. Now, it's not going to look great yet. We're going to do that, the top ridge of that lower lid. You know, and if you got lines, that's fine. Don't worry about it. We're going to give, let's see, the outer eye just a little bit of that warm ochre, and then a little bit of that warm peach, because it's turning towards the light, and it'll give the eyeball that spherical feeling, and that's what we want. So I'm just going to keep adding texture to the eyeball before we put on our highlight. And you'll see this will all make sense in a second. I know it's a little kind of strange. But so I put kind of an orangey peach over here, kind of a green color over here, and now I'm adding kind of a mid-tone, I guess it's almost a lavender or periwinkle.
Now that's just to create more like a round sphere.
Exactly.
Or
yeah, we just want it to be
eye,
a little
rounded.
just to give it that rounded feeling. We want to make sure it has that before we start doing all the details, or it's not going to have that three-dimensionality. Okay, so now, just for kind of a quick look at what it's going to be with the highlight, we can add a little of that down here. Let's go up here. Now that's not a white yet. Where's our white? Let's try this one here. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a larger brush. Let's try a 35. And then I'm just going to lightly, let's lower this, lower the opacity, and I'm going to lightly build up right the closest part of the sphere to us, which is this section right here because it catches the highlight. And you can see by adding this transparent white, it just brings this part of the eyeball forward.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
It's a nice blend there.
So now what we can do is we can work on the iris here. So we'll lower the brush size back to, I guess, our 21. We'll try that. And I'll start by doing the darkest part of the eye, and I think instead of using a black, I'll use a very dark blue. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to redraw that iris. And again, this is a little light, so we'll raise that a little. And we'll lower our brush size to 17. Okay, so we get that outer edge.
Now, when you're drawing circular shapes, you just do it all by hand. You don't use a selection tool or anything like that.
I'm going to do it all by hand because we can go back and we can adjust the outer edge because we know, we used a pale green on the edge. We used the peach over here, so I can adjust it as I go. And I probably should because right now this dark is a little harsh against this light green.
Yeah.
So if I want to go back and just over the center of where these two colors meet, do that light green transparently, it'll just have the iris flow better into the white of the eye. So we'll do that. Okay, so we're just redefining this. And we're doing the outer edge of the iris. Now we'll define the center portion. And the important part about doing the eye is that you make sure you have all your highlights in the right places. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose, because she has blue eyes, I'm going to choose a lighter blue. Let's go with, this is the dark blue we used, I believe, so we'll just stay within that hue of colors along that gradient. And we'll put in, and what I like to do is, if you look at an eye, it has those little radial lines.
Oh, yeah.
So that's how I like to draw it in. Now, if you want to just do, one brush stroke across the whole thing, that's fine. But I think if you do it this way, it gives it a little more of the depth that we're looking for.
So again, you're not starting with black. You're actually starting with like the darkest blue.
Right.
And then brightening from there.
Right. I want to use my lightest whites and my blackest blacks last.
Okay.
Okay. And again, it doesn't have to be a perfect circle. You're building up.
It's part of the art.
These. Exactly.
Just to have it more like the look hand drawn.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So now if I want to, because this is very gray, I can come up here and I can choose a brighter color if I want to, and very lightly add in a little of that. Because we already have the base of our grays, if we add a little more color, it won't be too abrupt. It won't be too harsh. Okay, so we can add that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here to one of the dark blues, and in a very transparent brush, I'm just going to softly glaze over the edge so that it sits back a little farther while still having those that texture of color underneath. Okay, so it rounds it out a little. Okay, and then I'll just go back up, let's see, to my dark color that we made, and I'll just redefine the top of that eye. And again, if you want to, you can do all these details on another layer so that you don't lose anything if you make a mistake. Okay. There we go. And now I'm going to choose a dark gray, and I'm going to do the same thing along here to give a shadow from the eyelid.
Just for the separation?
Just for the separation, because I did the dark of the eyelid itself, but now I need a shadow from that lid. And I'm just going to kind of do a little squiggle at this transition where the iris meets the white of the eye. And that softens it just a little so it's not too abrupt. Okay, now what I can do is, now this isn't finished, but I'm going to work around the eye consistently so I don't bring one portion up too much. So I'm going to pick a peach color here, and I'm going to do this underside. Let's see. of the lid, that highlight. And then I'm going to put a soft highlight at the very top of the lash line.
Is the lashes sort of like a final touch?
Yeah, we'll do the lashes last. We want to, because that's over everything else. If we do this first, we're going to have to go around them with all these highlights and and shadows and things like that. So I just kind of want to bring in all the colors that I see here. And again, I'm not being exact or too fussy with anything.
Oh, it's beautiful. It just really stands out. Just that eyelid part is just, it's really nice.
And we'll start adding the darks under the eye. There'll be a little more color here. And this is where the texture comes in. This is where the texture comes in because I'm not going to do the soft airbrush anymore. I'm just going to leave it so that it looks like a digital painting. And if you want to soften it out, you can do that. But I kind of like the texture of the brush strokes to show a little bit.
I like that too. It just has that little artsy thing to it.
Yeah, it's a little more, you know, you want somebody
almost
to...
It's like a pencil drawing.
Exactly.
Or something like
a little color pencil or maybe pastel. Okay, so there's the basics of your eyeball.